I sat in my car with the engine off, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Through the windshield, I could see the party lights glowing from my mother's house. Laughter drifted out into the night air, mixed with the sound of clinking glasses and cheerful voices. Everyone was celebrating my brother. Tonight, he was the star. I watched as my mother stood proudly on the porch, holding up a shiny new set of keys. The crowd of relatives and neighbors clapped and cheered as she placed them in my brother's hand. "You're the man of the house now," she said, her face glowing with joy. My brother puffed up his chest, grinning like he had just won the lottery. But what did I get? A couple of old chairs shoved into the back of my car earlier, some leftover food from the kitchen, and a few mumbled words from my mother about being helpful for taking the scraps. That was my share of the celebration, junk no one else wanted. I could hear the whispers. Some of my aunts shook their heads, muttering under their breath about how unfair it looked. Others smirked, enjoying the drama, their eyes flicking from my brother to me, measuring the difference. It wasn't just me who saw the favoritism. It was plain for everyone. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my face straight, but deep inside, my chest burned. I wasn't angry about the house itself. I was angry about what it meant. My mother was showing everyone loud and clear who mattered to her and who didn't. As the cheers grew louder and my brother held the keys up like a trophy, my mother reached out to hug him. Her voice cracked with pride when she said, "I always knew you'd make me proud." Her words cut deeper than anything else. Because for me, she had never once said those words. For me, there had only been chores, responsibilities, and silence. I sat there, feeling smaller than ever, invisible in plain sight. And as the laughter spilled into the night, my eyes blurred with tears I refused to let fall. That was the day I realized my mother didn't see me as her daughter, only as a mistake she had to tolerate. Rachel was 32, but sometimes she felt much older. Life had worn her down in ways she never expected. Before she married Daniel, things were so different. She had her own apartment in the city, a steady job she loved in marketing, and friends she could call at any time of the night. She wasn't rich, but she was proud of what she had built for herself. She paid her bills, saved a little, and enjoyed her freedom. She thought she was strong. She thought she was smart enough to never let someone control her. Then came Daniel. She met him at a friend's birthday dinner. He was the loudest voice at the table, telling stories about his business ideas, his plans, the future he said he was building. Everyone laughed at his jokes. Rachel did too. He had that kind of charm, the kind that made you believe he could light up any room. He noticed her quickly, and before the night was over, he made sure she had his number. The first months were like a dream. Daniel opened doors, sent flowers to her office, and called her every morning just to say good day. He told her she was the most important person in his life, that he couldn't believe his luck in meeting her. When he spoke about marriage, he promised stability, a home filled with love, and a partnership where she would never feel alone. Rachel believed him. She wanted to believe him. After the wedding, things shifted slowly. At first, it was little comments, suggesting she didn't need to work so hard because he could provide for them, or asking why she spent so much time with her coworkers after hours. "You have me now," he would say with a smile, as if it was a gift. He framed his words as love, as protection. She didn't realize at the time that they were seeds of control. The isolation grew in small steps. He didn't like her best friend, Sarah, said she was a bad influence. He made her feel guilty for canceling plans with him, even if it was just for a simple night out with her sister. Over time, Rachel saw less and less of the people who once filled her life. The finances came next. Daniel insisted it was more practical if they shared accounts. "Why keep things separate? We're a team," he said. She agreed, thinking it was normal for a married couple. Slowly, her paycheck was funneled into their joint account, and soon she wasn't even sure how much she had left for herself. Daniel started monitoring her spending. If she bought a new dress or had lunch out, he would ask questions, make her feel guilty, remind her of their goals. By the time she realized how much control he had, it was too late. She had let him close every door around her. He had made sure of it. Now, sitting in the same house she once thought was her dream home, Rachel felt like a stranger to her old self. She went through the motions every day, packing lunch for Ethan, cleaning the kitchen, working from home under Daniel's watchful eye. But inside, she was crumbling. She missed laughing with friends. She missed the pride of seeing her own money in her account. She missed the version of herself who believed she deserved more. Still, some part of her clung to hope. She told herself Daniel would change, that the man she met years ago was still in there somewhere. When he apologized after his outbursts, when he brought flowers or kissed her forehead as if nothing had happened, she wanted to believe it was real. She wanted to believe their marriage wasn't just a trap she couldn't escape. Rachel's heart was torn between the memory of who Daniel once seemed to be and the reality of who he had become. She told herself she was staying for Ethan, to keep his life steady, to give him both parents under one roof. But deep down, she knew she was also staying because she was afraid. Afraid of what leaving would cost her. Afraid of what Daniel might do if she tried. The woman who once stood so tall, who once believed in her strength, now lived in the shadow of a man who made her feel small every day. Yet, in the quietest corners of her heart, she still carried a spark, the faint, fragile hope that one day she could reclaim herself. That night, after the coffee incident, Rachel lay in bed wide awake. Daniel was asleep beside her, snoring softly, his arm thrown across the blanket as if nothing had happened. The smell of burned coffee still lingered in her hair, even after she had showered. Her skin was tender to the touch. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the coffee splashing toward her again. Her heart wouldn't let her rest. Something inside her whispered that there was more, something she wasn't seeing. She thought about how quickly Daniel had demanded her credit card, how angry he became when she refused. It wasn't just about control anymore. It felt like desperation. Rachel turned her head and looked at the phone charging on his nightstand. She hesitated. She had never gone through his phone before. He guarded it closely, always keeping it locked, always suspicious if she even touched it. But tonight, her fear was stronger than her guilt. She waited until his breathing grew heavy and steady. Slowly, she slid the phone from the charger, her hands trembling. To her surprise, the screen lit up without asking for a password. He had forgotten to lock it. She told herself she would just look quickly, just enough to calm the storm in her mind. What she found broke her. The first thing she saw were text messages, dozens of them. A woman's name she didn't recognize. Late-night messages filled with laughing emojis, hearts, and pictures. Her chest tightened as she scrolled. He had been meeting this woman, telling her lies about work trips, sending money, Rachel's money. Her throat went dry. She opened his banking app. The numbers on the screen made her stomach twist. Thousands of dollars gone, charges from casinos and online gambling sites, all tied back to her credit card. Every month she wondered why their savings never seemed to grow, even though she worked so hard. Now she knew. The betrayal was deeper than she could have imagined. It wasn't just the coffee. It wasn't just the shouting or the controlling words. He was living a double life, using her hard-earned money to gamble and spoil another woman while keeping her trapped at home. Her hand shook as she put the phone back on the nightstand. She pulled the blanket over her face, not to sleep but to hide her tears. Beside her, Daniel stirred, and for a moment she was sure he would wake up, see her shaking, and know what she had done. But he didn't. He rolled over and went on sleeping, as if nothing in the world was wrong. Rachel lay there staring at the ceiling, her mind racing. She thought about Ethan in his room down the hall. She thought about the years she had given up, the people she had let go, the life she had surrendered for this man. And now she knew the truth. He was not only hurting her, he was stealing from her, betraying her, and building his lies on her back. She wanted to get up, pack a bag, and leave right then. She wanted to wake Ethan, carry him out the door, and never look back. But fear held her down. Fear of what Daniel would do if he caught her. Fear of his anger, his violence, his threats. She remembered the coffee on her skin, the sharp sting, the cold way he looked at her after. If that was what he did over a credit card, what would he do if he knew she had gone through his phone? So she stayed still, silent, pretending to sleep, though her eyes never closed. Inside her chest, something had changed. The hope she clung to was no longer about saving her marriage. It was about survival, about finding a way out without breaking apart completely. Rachel realized she couldn't ignore the truth anymore. Daniel wasn't just controlling. He wasn't just angry. He was dangerous. And sooner or later, she would have to choose between her fear of him and her chance at freedom. The days after Rachel discovered Daniel's secrets felt heavier than any she had lived before. Every time she looked at him, she saw the messages on his phone. She saw the gambling charges, the lies, the woman whose name was now burned into her mind. But she said nothing. She carried the truth quietly, because she was afraid of what would happen if he knew she had seen it. Daniel seemed sharper, more watchful than before, as if he could sense her thoughts slipping away from him. When Rachel tried to keep her distance, he noticed. When she avoided his touch, he questioned her. "What's wrong with you lately?" he would ask, his voice calm but edged with warning. If she said nothing, he would smirk, as if he had caught her in a lie. If she said, "I'm tired," he accused her of being ungrateful. The arguments grew more frequent. Sometimes they were about money. You waste it on groceries we don't need, he snapped one morning. You buy brand names when generic would do. Do you even know how to manage a household? She bit her tongue, knowing the truth, that he was the one draining her account, would only lead to more violence. Other times, the fights were about Ethan. Daniel accused her of being too soft on their son, of spoiling him with affection. He needs discipline, Daniel said after scolding Ethan for spilling juice on the carpet. Rachel wanted to protect her child, to gather him in her arms, but she also feared making things worse. Ethan's wide, frightened eyes watched every argument, and Rachel's heart broke each time she saw him shrink into himself. Daniel used his charm like a weapon too. After lashing out, he would soften his tone, bring her flowers, kiss her cheek. I'm under a lot of pressure, babe, he would whisper. You know I love you. Don't make me feel like the bad guy here. His words twisted her reality. For a moment, she almost believed him. That was his power, making her doubt what she knew was true. One evening, Rachel couldn't hold it in any longer. She drove to her younger sister Emily's apartment under the excuse of running errands. Emily, just 28, was bright, warm, and open-hearted. When she saw Rachel at her door, pale and quiet, she pulled her inside without hesitation. Rachel sat on the couch, hands folded tightly in her lap, staring at the floor. It took her several minutes before the words finally came out. He threw coffee at me. Her voice was flat, almost detached. Emily's eyes widened in horror. What? Rachel, are you serious? Rachel nodded, tears welling despite her effort to stay composed. She told her sister about the coffee, about the yelling, about the way he controlled every dollar and every decision. She didn't mention the other woman, not yet. Even to Emily, the shame of that betrayal was too raw. Emily leaned forward, her voice shaking. You can't stay there. You have to leave him. This isn't safe for you or for Ethan. Rachel shook her head. It's not that simple. He said if I ever tried to leave, he'd take Ethan from me. He said no court would give me custody because I don't make enough money on my own anymore. He knows how to make it sound like I'm the unstable one. Emily grabbed her hand. That's not true. He's just scaring you. You're his victim, Rachel. You're not crazy and you're not weak. But Rachel couldn't believe it fully. Daniel's voice echoed in her mind louder than Emily's. He had told her so many times that she was nothing without him, that no one would believe her if she spoke out. And part of her feared he was right. The breaking points kept piling up. One night, Ethan crawled into her bed after a fight between his parents. His small body trembled as he whispered, Mommy, I don't like when Daddy yells at you. Rachel held him close, tears sliding silently down her face. In that moment, she realized her silence was shaping her son's world. Ethan was learning fear, learning to tiptoe around his father's anger the way she did. But leaving still felt impossible. Daniel reminded her daily that everything they had, the house, the car, even the savings, was under his control. You'd be nothing without me, he said during one of their fights. Don't forget that. If you walk out, you'll have nothing, and Ethan will stay with me. Do you really want that? Rachel carried those words like chains. At work, she plastered on a smile, pretending everything was fine. At home, she moved carefully, measuring every word and step. Inside, though, she was crumbling. The fear of losing Ethan clashed with the fear of staying. It was a war inside her chest, one that left her exhausted every night. Emily called often after that first talk, urging Rachel to make a plan. I'll help you, she promised. You don't have to do this alone. But Rachel always found reasons to delay. Not now. Ethan has school. Daniel's in a good mood lately. I just need to think. Deep down, Rachel knew there was no perfect time. She knew the risk of waiting was growing. Daniel's anger was sharper, his control tighter. And the more she stayed silent, the more dangerous it became. But fear is a powerful thing, and for now, it still held her prisoner. At night, when the house was quiet and Ethan was asleep, Rachel stared at the ceiling, listening to Daniel's breathing beside her. She thought about the woman she used to be. She thought about the little boy who deserved better. And she wondered how much longer she could survive this before something finally broke beyond repair. Rachel finally reached a point where she couldn't carry the weight of silence anymore. Every day with Daniel felt like walking on broken glass, and every night she lay awake with her heart racing. She kept thinking about Ethan, about the kind of life he was learning to accept as normal. She told herself that if she didn't do something, her son would grow up believing love meant fear. So one afternoon, when Daniel was out running errands, Rachel slipped out of the house and drove across town. Her palms were sweaty on the steering wheel. She had made an appointment with a lawyer recommended by Emily, but the thought of actually meeting him made her stomach twist. She was terrified Daniel would find out. The office was quiet and smelled of paper and coffee. The lawyer, a calm man in his 40s, listened patiently as Rachel haltingly explained her situation. She told him about the abuse, about the money, about the credit cards in her name. For the first time, she let the words spill out without holding back. He nodded, took notes, and then said something that made her blood run cold. "Rachel, your husband isn't just misusing your account. He's already under investigation. He has several unpaid debts, and from what I can see, some of his financial activity could be considered fraud. If you stay tied to him legally, this could all fall on you too." Rachel felt dizzy. "You mean I could be blamed?" "Yes," the lawyer said firmly. "Unless you separate your finances and protect yourself. The sooner you act, the better chance you have of shielding both yourself and your son." Rachel left the office shaken. She sat in her car gripping the steering wheel, staring at the street, unable to move. Everything Daniel had told her, that she needed him, that she was nothing without him, was a lie. In truth, he was dragging her down with him, and if she didn't act soon, she and Ethan could be destroyed by his choices. That night, Rachel tried to stay calm, but her nerves betrayed her. Daniel noticed her quietness at dinner. "What's with you?" he asked, suspicious. "Nothing," she said quickly, but her voice cracked. He narrowed his eyes. "You're hiding something." Rachel's heart pounded. She wanted to wait to plan to leave safely, but the words tumbled out before she could stop them. "I know what you're doing, Daniel. I know about the gambling. I know about the other woman. And I know you're drowning in debt." For a moment, he just stared at her, stunned. Then his face twisted with rage. He slammed his fist against the table, making Ethan flinch. "You went through my things," he shouted. "You think you can spy on me? You ungrateful bitch." Ethan began to cry, covering his ear. Rachel stood up quickly, trying to shield him. "Stop yelling, Daniel. Please, not in front of him." But Daniel was already on his feet. His chair tipped backward, crashing against the floor. He grabbed Rachel's arm so hard she gasped. "You think you can accuse me? You think you can walk away? You belong to me, Rachel. Everything you have is because of me." Rachel tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. For the first time, Ethan screamed, "Daddy, stop! Don't hurt Mommy." The sound of his son's voice seemed to cut through Daniel's rage for a second, but only a second. He shoved Rachel hard against the wall, his face inches from hers, his breath hot and furious. "If you ever talk about this again, I'll make sure you regret it. And don't think for a second you'll get Ethan. He's mine." Rachel's body shook, but something inside her shifted. Ethan stood in the doorway, sobbing, his small hands clenched into fists. She saw the fear in his eyes, the same fear she had lived with for years. In that moment, Rachel understood. If she stayed, she wasn't just losing herself. She was losing her son too. She forced her voice to steady. "No, Daniel. I'm done." Her words seemed to stun him. His grip loosened, and she took the chance to pull away. She grabbed Ethan, holding him tight against her chest. Her whole body trembled, but her decision was firm now. She couldn't go back. Daniel paced the kitchen like a caged animal, his face red, his words a mix of threats and insults. But Rachel didn't listen anymore. She focused only on Ethan's sobs, on the way his little body shook against her. This was her breaking point. This was the moment she finally knew there was no saving the marriage, no saving Daniel. When Ethan finally fell asleep in her arms later that night, Rachel sat in the dark, staring at the wall. Her cheek throbbed where he had shoved her. Her heart still raced. But beneath the fear was a new strength, one she hadn't felt in years. She whispered into the quiet, more to herself than anyone else. "Enough. This ends now." The morning after the fight, Rachel woke with a sore arm and heavy eyes, but her mind was clear for the first time in years. She knew what she had to do. For too long she had been silent, too afraid to move. But seeing Ethan's fear, hearing his small voice beg his father to stop, had snapped something inside her. She couldn't let him grow up believing this was what love looked like. While Daniel was at work, she packed a bag for herself and Ethan. Just the essentials, clothes, documents, a few of Ethan's favorite toys. Her hands shook as she moved around the house, but she didn't stop. She called Emily, who came right away, her face pale but determined. "We're going to the courthouse," Emily said. "You're not waiting another day." At the courthouse, Rachel filed for a restraining order and began the process of divorce. The lawyer she had met with guided her through it, assuring her that she was doing the right thing. "You have more power than you think," he said gently. "You've been carrying him on your back. Now it's time to stand on your own." When Daniel was served with the papers, his rage exploded. He called her, sent threats, promised she'd regret it. But this time, Rachel didn't bend. The restraining order meant he couldn't come near her. For the first time in years, she felt a measure of safety. The weeks that followed were not easy. Rachel cried often, sometimes from fear, sometimes from relief. Nights were the hardest, lying awake in a new apartment she had rented with Emily's help, the silence pressing against her. But slowly, she began to feel the air returning to her. She started therapy, where she spoke aloud the things she had buried for years. The coffee, the shouting, the endless control. Saying the words hurt, but it also freed her. Her therapist reminded her that healing wasn't quick, but each step she took was proof she was moving forward. Rachel reconnected with her old friends. The first time she met Sarah for coffee again, She was nervous, ashamed for disappearing for so long. But Sarah hugged her tightly and said, "You don't need to explain. I'm just glad you're here." For the first time, Rachel laughed without guilt. Ethan began to heal too. He no longer flinched at sudden noises, and at night he slept more peacefully. Rachel watched him play with his toys, his little smile slowly returning, and she promised herself she would never let anyone hurt him again. As for Daniel, the truth finally caught up with him. The lawyer kept Rachel updated. Daniel's debts were crushing, his fraud under investigation. The same arrogance that once made him seem powerful now worked against him. In court, his lies unraveled, and his control slipped away piece by piece. Rachel didn't celebrate his downfall, but she felt a deep sense of justice. He could no longer use her money, her name, or her silence to shield himself. She had broken free, and now the consequences were his to face. One evening, Rachel sat with Emily in her small living room. Ethan was asleep in his room, and the two sisters shared a bottle of wine. Emily looked at her and said, "You're different now, stronger. Do you see it?" Rachel smiled softly, her eyes misting. "Not all the time, but sometimes, yes. I feel like I'm finding myself again." For the first time in a long time, Rachel believed it. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was rebuilding. She was learning to trust her own voice, to believe she deserved safety, love, and peace. Her scars remained, both on her skin and in her heart, but they no longer defined her. They were proof of what she had endured and what she had overcome. And every day, she felt that faint spark inside her grow brighter. One quiet morning, I stood by the window of my new home with a small plant in my hands. Its leaves were green and soft, the soil fresh and damp. I placed it carefully on the windowsill, where the sunlight poured in. It wasn't just decoration. To me, it was a symbol. Growth. Roots. The chance to nurture something with care, the way I had finally learned to nurture myself. As I pressed the pot into place, I looked around my little living room. It wasn't grand. It wasn't filled with expensive things, but it was steady. It was safe. It was mine. Every corner told a story of my hard work. Every detail carried the weight of what I had overcome. I thought of my brother then, and the house he had lost. A house handed to him without effort, built on pride and entitlement. And I thought of myself, standing here in a home built not from gifts but from years of sacrifice, long nights, and determination. They gave him a house built on sand, I whispered to myself. I built my home on stone. And this time, no one can take it away from me. The words settled in the air, soft but strong. For so long, I had been chasing love, chasing approval, chasing scraps of worth from people who never saw me clearly. But now, I didn't need any of that. I had given myself what they never could. I touched the leaves of the little plant and smiled. It would grow here, just as I would. Maybe slowly, maybe with care, but steadily, rooted in strength, reaching toward the light. And for the first time in my life, I felt whole. Not because of what I had been given, but because of what I had chosen for myself. Hey besties. Thanks for staying till the end. Imagine your mom giving your brother a house while you're left with scraps. Painful, right? But sometimes betrayal lights the fire that makes us stronger. I built my own home on stone with my own hands. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, drop a comment, and subscribe for more. See you in the next one.